Fantastic.
We have a few minutes to let a couple more people join us before the top of the hour. 1 minute to go.
Is a huge explosion going to take place at this? Are we counting down?
The countdown, yeah, you see, because I told you, it's Star Trek, off to the new planet. Here we are, Sunday morning, evening, afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. Thanks, everybody, for joining in to Ganot's Whole Health, Whole Life, Whole World Forum. Bill and Marlene, Bill Tara, Marlene Watson Tara are going to be presenting their perspectives on how to live a full, happy, healthy life, integrating their life ideas, life practices with the environment, and giving advice to all of you folks. Wait a few more moments. Please keep your microphone muted if you have the ability to do so. And Bill and Marlene are people I've known for a long time and have been involved in health and wellness and dietary education for many, many years. And Clara Levine, who's joining us, has been helping Ganot for many years. She's in Japan right now, late night for her, but she's going to be moderating to some extent and keeping everybody admitted, or you can also remove people if they don't behave.
And if things get rowdy.
Yeah. So welcome. It's Sunday morning on the East Coast of the United States. In fact, most of the United States is Sunday morning, but I know many of you are joining from other parts of the world. So thanks for taking the time and joining us once again for a 1.5 to 2 hour presentation about whole health, whole life, radiant life. Marlene Watson-Tara has been involved in education, in cooking, and in teaching about health, nutrition, and the benefits of a vegan diet. She has several books out. Do you want to show the covers of your books, Marlene, so people know? And I think these books are available from local bookstores, Amazon, although some people prefer not buying from Amazon. Yeah, Go Vegan and
Macrobiotics for all seasons.
Macrobiotics for all seasons.
Weight loss nature's way.
Ah, weight loss.
This is all life matters. I don't have any of the other ones here. No, these were nearby.
And Marlene has been studying, teaching, and sharing her insights, her experience, and her health tips for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, 47 years now.
47 years she's been teaching. And she supports Bill in his studies and teachings. And I think Marlene has some insights that she wants to share first about the value benefits of the vegan diet, the diet that she has been following. She and Bill have been following for many years. So Marlene, take it away.
Oh, I'm on first. I thought I was on after the husband.
Bill put you first, ladies first.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Let me find my PowerPoint. You can see the screen, okay?
Yes, great.
Okay. So I'll keep this short because I wasn't sure how long I was going to be on. So I'll probably just race through some of these slides with a few insightful thoughts that I like to share with my students and my clients. So our Ultimate Health Experience is probably our kind of flagship workshop that we teach, and of course, based on our human ecology project, which Bill and I developed Well, we started developing way back in 2003, and we've moved 19 times, 7 countries, and we didn't actually get it fully registered with the Charities Commission in London until about 4 years ago, and that was no mean feat. I mean, it's very, very difficult to be registered as a charity. It's not like in the States where you apply for a 501. This is like rigorous. You need lawyers and all sorts. Anyway, so we completed that and we're very happy with it. The thing for me is plants lead the way of all life. That's my focus, that's my mission, that's been my life's work for decades. And you know, I developed Queen of Beans as a fun program, especially for bringing people to the kitchen, you know, and helping them understand that because people really don't know what to do with beans, you know, and there's so many fear factors out there promoting even more confusion why people shouldn't eat beans, you know. So that's one of the passions I have, and my whole kitchen has every coloured bean, grain you can imagine and think about. And actually, I'll talk a bit later, but fibre actually saved my life, and I'll share that with you later on. So the Human Ecology Project is based on, obviously, Bill's macrobiotic teaching, my own teaching of TCM that I studied when I was very young. I was very interested in becoming an acupuncturist. But for me, the TCM, the life force of understanding yin and yang, is the only thing that's ever made sense to me, because we're changing, everything's changing all the time, every second, the pulse of our wrist, the pulse of our planet, whatever. And way back in 2005, when Colin Campbell published the China study, Bill and I were super excited. We thought, this is what the world's need. Things are going to start happening. Things are going to change. Well, that was obviously a big mistake, you know, because as you'll hear throughout my presentation, what's happened with Colin is outrageous. Anyway, he wrote the foreword of my last book, Go Vegan, and he presented with Michio presented at Cornell. So, you know, the association there is just fantastic. And when I was writing Go Vegan, I wanted it to be more than a cookbook. I wanted it to be based on the principles of everything that's important to my life and my teaching. And that's obviously nutritional science indicating the microscope, the environment indicating the tree, and the spiral being ancient wisdom. So throughout the book, you know, where you might have a recipe, there's also a nugget of information that I'm perhaps, you know, relating to what it is I'm sharing or teaching or talking about at that point. So this is me. I'm always excited and energized, seriously, every single day, because for me, with everything that's going on in the world, if you can try and find some good news to share with people, you know, it's the best motivator out there. And whatever I want for myself, that's what I want for others. I love to give this health, you know, it's like I was given this gift at young age to start exploring and looking into life and health from the age of 17. And, you know, I always feel when people come, particularly for health counselling, you know, it's not their fault. We're born into this world where we're indoctrinated into needing to be eating meat, dairy, fish, eggs, milk every single day. That's what we're taught. That's what our parents were taught. That's what their parents were taught. So, you know, teaching my truth is what I love to do. And of course, the first law of ecology is everything is connected. So the Human Ecology Project is Bill and I's life's work, and we're hugely passionate about it. Recently, the last couple of years, we've been getting involved in schools and creating these programs for Oxford Literary Festival. This was just last month. And it's just been an incredible, you know, experience, because there's over 200 people in these large 17th century dining halls. And, you know, I create all the recipes, the vegan recipes, and the chefs do an amazing job serving 200 people at each event. And then from there, we go into the different schools, and Bill and I will do presentations, we'll give cooking classes, and they'll get a copy of Go Vegan through our Human Ecology Project. And it's just such the most amazing opportunity that we've had to open doors to many, many people. And, you know, if you look at even just one of the menus there from last month, you know, we have our Human Ecology Project logo on the Oxford Literary Festival, and I say that not to brag, but I say it because Bill and I are really proud of making this impact into these universities now and getting people to listen to us. And for the first time ever, we ran our full Why Vegan workshop. It was a full day at Oxford University, which is no mean feat either, because mostly they're not interested in, you know, putting out this work. So again, I created the menu, and Bill and I presented along with their friend Gary Francione, and Anna Charlton, his wife, was supposed to be there. She couldn't make it over from the States. We've already been booked for another one next year. So the veganism is growing in the universities, and that's where we have to keep reaching out into the schools and colleges. So a topic of interest to everybody, of course, is, you know, what is human nutrition? And obviously, as I put these slides up, this is like a workshop that I would be teaching, so I'm not going to have time to get through them all, as you can imagine. Lenny only gave me 20 minutes. Shame on you, Lenny Jacobs.
Oh, you could keep on
No,
longer.
no, I won't, because Bill's got a PowerPoint to do. But it was just to kind of let you see that, you know, there's more to, you know, understanding nutrition. For, you know, we know this saying, one man's meat is another man's poison, and food is only relevant to what species you're talking about, what organism you're talking about. You know, horses need what horses need, you know, chipmunks need what chipmunks need, humans need what humans need. And of course, on top of everything that's there, you know, food is more than just a chemical delivery system. It's spirit, it's energy, it's chi, it's your life force, right? So, you know, this is a big important aspect of what I teach in my classes. And then, of course, the macronutrients, the lies that we're all told that, you know, we can only get protein, which is obviously what we need for building and repairing tissue. We only get it from animal food. We're told that the fats that we need come from dairy food, you know, and of course the poor old carbohydrate, it's demonized and victimized by every food industry in the world, you know, that the carbs make you fat and the carbs make you sick and what have you. So we all know protein. There is no problem with protein. We have enough protein, you know, there's never been a problem with getting enough protein. So, and the common concept, you know, we laugh and say to people, if someone come up to you and said, you know, hi, can you show me an amino acid, or what is an amino acid? Most people don't even understand the structure of protein. So when you break it down into a simple form and share with them the understanding that, you know, the structural units, the amino acids, are broken down in a much more difficult format from animal protein than they are from plants. We go to fats, you know, everything we need, the omega-3 and omega-6 are in all these plants. We don't need to add any more fats. We don't need to add any oils. And, you know, even with tofu, peanut butter, you know, all the beans, they're all very rich in what we need. And Mother Nature didn't get it wrong. So I know I'm probably preaching to the converted here, so forgive me, but it's just, you know, when people come to us, they've never been presented with this information before. And of course, as I said, the carbohydrates, it's who we are, it's what we run on, right? It's the fuel that gets us out of bed in the morning and gives us chi and energy and life force to keep us going all day. And of course, they demonize it and lump it all together, but there's such a giant difference between whole complex carbohydrates and the processed carbohydrates and the processed foods that are out there that most people are eating. And the kitchen is the centre of the universe. Sometimes I call on Mr. Tara to assist me. You know, I sometimes get people that are new to this and they want me to cook a week's menu, which is a huge job. So, you know, Bill's fantastic. He'll come in. He's very good at chopping, actually. If you ever need to hire somebody, he's pretty good. So, you know, but for me, cooking has become a lost art. So I train a lot of chefs, you know, for these clients, and then that gets them back into their kitchen because they start to take an interest in what's coming out of their own kitchen. And we've got to understand textures and, you know, teaching people that food combining is a skill, so you digest the food properly and you don't end up with all sorts of problems with digestion. You know, the subjective and objective measures of health, we say to people, you'll see it in as little as 1 week. How do you feel? You know, measure your own vitality, or measure, you know, if you had arthritic problems, or, and then of course the objective ones, you can have blood tests done or whatever. But you know, the microbiome shifts within days, and I do a 21-day reset program with clients as well. Bill doesn't do counselling, he hasn't done it for quite a long time now, but you know, I love to get I love to see the change in people's lives. And okay, we work online, but there's nothing nicer than having someone in your kitchen and, you know, teaching them how to cook and having them taste the food and, you know, feel the love of the cooking as well that goes into it. So, so a big one for me is why go vegan? You know, what is the principles of what makes people look at vegan? Well, there's so many options, but for me, veganism is the most important initiative in the history of humanity, and that's how I look at the world. So whether it's for the health, whether it's about the world, whether it's about death and suffering of animals, you got to find out what it is that connects you to want to look at this way of living. And back in the days, in the 50s, you know, Einstein said, nothing will benefit human health and increase chances of human survival on planet Earth as much as the evolution of a vegetarian diet. Well, that evolution is here, and it's veganism. So back in the day in 2005, I talked about when Colin wrote the China study. I have to say I love Colin. He's like my dad. You know, he's Scottish. If you don't know that, he's still his family up in the Scottish Highlands, and we have a real affinity. We've been friends for decades, and I like to refer to Colin as the father of modern nutritional science, as Hippocrates being the father of modern medicine. I mean, 60 years in research, his work's just phenomenal. So then we look at Japan and we find out, you know, how come Japan are the most long-lived country in the world? And there was a G7 study done there, which is phenomenal. You can find links to these on our website because I write blogs and Bill and I write articles and posts about them. So everything that we put out, we research well. We don't, you know, just blah, blah and put something out, you know. So everything is there. And when we look at anti-inflammatory foods, this is Bill, this is one of our veg boxes. So I used to grow on my own veg, which we can't because we're not in a situation right now to do that. We have greens 3 times a day, every day, 7 days a week. You have no idea how many greens I feed that man and myself. And I think from my own childhood, brought up this way, we were water freak. I mean, you've no idea how much water I was drinking as a girl, teaching yoga, doing all these things. So 2 of the most important things that I teach my clients is to hydrate and eat greens, seriously. Apart from anything else, the most anti-inflammatory foods are found in these vegetables with sulforaphane and glucosinolates. And every single second, 37 million new cells are being born, regenerating in you and me and every human being. I mean, if you just think about the incredible system that we are, this body, it's miraculous in design. So 37 million new cells every second. And then think about that on a large scale. We have 1 billion neurons in our gut. So it's our second brain, and we've got to listen to it. The power of the food industry, I'm taking that from the greens and the water and the things that I teach, which I'm passionate about, because the power of the food industry, as we all know, there's no money in greens, there's no money in broccoli. And, you know, I just want to highlight a few points here that from 2005, Colin's book, he demonstrated the link, as we all know, but he was cancelled. He was removed from Cornell. He was taken down, his photographs, his website, as if he'd never existed. Because if you look at the big milk bottle there at Cornell, the dairy industry, the food industry are one of the biggest sponsors of Cornell University. So Colin was cancelled along with so many other fantastic people in the world that have done great work. And, you know, it's just heartbreaking. So we all have to keep sharing as much truth as we can. Because at the end of the day, not all nutritional science is real. You know, there's so much bogus. I think it's 70 up towards 75% of the food industry now pay for nutritional science, which is just mind-boggling. Because they're about, you know, the world is about the economy. It's not about the ecology. So they have the loudest voice. So we just all have to keep shouting louder. It's the only way forward. Okay. So up to now, what is your motivation? Health, animals, environment, family, future, you know, choose one. And when you feel that pulsing in your heart, then you know that's your why, then stick with it. And why I'm here is because I love to help everybody maximize their own human potential. So obviously I can't go through all these points, but the first and foremost important thing is how to set up your kitchen. And you can do that without changing your whole life. You know, most people already eat vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds and probably some beans, maybe grain even now and again. So all you're doing is you're taking the animal food out and you're adding in a little bit more of the grains and the beans. And it's really just about shifting to a new normal. It's actually, people overcomplicate it, you know, nothing kind of goes along the path of least resistance when you're asking someone to change their diet. But when you show them how easy it is, it's a no-brainer. And how do we achieve an optimal vegan diet? We've got to have diversity. That's the most important thing. We can't just, you know, pick one thing or eat vegan junk or, you know, processed junk, you know, all the flooding of the food market now with every single processed vegan food imaginable. Of course, because they're not interested in healthy, just whatever the demand is, that's what the food industry will make. So then we look, eat as food is grown, and this is my little mantra. Food makes the blood makes the cells, cells makes the tissue makes the body, and here we be every day. Every single day, what we put in our mouth is creating, remember, 37 million cells every second. Bill and I were teaching a few years ago at the Queen Mary University in London, and there was about 200 doctors, and I had them all on their feet, and I had them all repeating that 3 or 4 times. I mean, they were laughing, but they, you know, they joined in, and you know, it's something that they don't think about. It's something they're not taught. So we just got to keep reaching out.
Marlene, can I interrupt? Could you go back 2 slides, the one about B12 and
Yeah.
what are the sources of those?
Well, the B12, you know, people talk about lots of sea vegetables and stuff, but they're really mostly analogues that's in that. You know, I think you're going to be discussing B12, aren't you, Bill?
I can do, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a whole thing on it, but I won't have time to get into it. You can get it from, obviously, it's a very, very important vitamin. It's neurological, and we take a B12 supplement once or twice a week. It's a tiny little Solgar, a naturally occurring bacteria. You know, it's just grown on molasses. You can get fortified foods, of course. There's fortified plant milks. They talk about tempeh having some B12. You know, it's not short in demand, you know, but for people that aren't eating a diverse diet, that are eating junk food, it's a bit of an issue. And we discuss that in a whole blog on our website, actually.
And
Yeah.
iodine and vitamin D?
Iodine, you know, plenty of iodine in sea vegetables, vitamin D. Obviously, the sun's the best source, but you get it in mushrooms too. You know, I mean, we eat quite a lot of dried mushrooms, maitake, shiitake. And again,
Sun-dried, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and you reconstitute them, you can, yeah, nothing is in short supply. The thing is, there's so much fear mongering around all this. I wish I could get into it because there's a whole lecture, which I can't do today, obviously. But trust me, if you eat a diverse diet of everything that's in your kitchen, you will not be low in anything. And people come to us that have B12 deficiencies and they're big meat eaters. They come to us, they have vitamin D deficiencies and they're big meat eaters. They're big dairy eaters. You know what I'm saying? So it just depends on what are people eating, what are people's digestive systems, are they in good health, are they absorbing well, you know? But, you know, I mean, probably we talk a whole lot about the cecum. In fact, Bill and I and Colin Campbell had a what's that? Did we do a live video? Yeah, it's an actual interview with Colin, and him and Bill and I get into a whole thing in B12. It's really fantastic. We should put a link up for that sometime. I'll send you it, Lenny. It's very good.
That'd be great. We could share it with the group. Yeah.
We're discussing it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so in my element, growing our vegetables when we had our home in Portugal, and I love the whole concept of Manasobo Fukuoka. You know, I mean, we often speak of producing food, but we do not produce the food. Only nature has the power to do that. I mean, what a powerful statement. I wish I had thought of that. It's just so beautiful, right? It's just so amazing. So, you know, right now we can't grow our own food because we don't have a garden area where we are. But how else do I take care of our microbes in our gut, which I do every single day? Because remember, they outnumber us by 10 to 1. Lenny Jacobs, did you know you're only 10% Lenny Jacobs? Yes, you are. 90% of me is only bacteria. So, you know, the microbes so central to our life. And if you think about it, when we're in schools and we take 1 teaspoon of topsoil and we say to these pupils, these kids, look, 1 billion individual microscopic cells in here, you know, 10,000 different species. They're not getting taught any of this incredible work. And one of the kids said to Bill, well, my food doesn't grow in that dirt, you know. So, you know, we're so passionate. We've got to get into more and more schools. It's our only hope. So this is me indoors just now. I sprout every single day mung beans, lentils, chickpeas, aduki beans, all these wonderful things. My sprouter's never empty. And these sprouts are incredibly, well, just look, that little seed, you know, look at the energy in that sprout. So we have sprouts every day with our greens, 3 times a day. So easy to do. So where do we get our protein? Well, oh, you know, let's not get into that. But if I had $1 for every time somebody asks me this, think about it. The elephants, the strongest animals in the world, they eat plants. And think about vegan athletes. And when we look at what we've done to the Earth's mammal biomass, you know, now there's only 4% of wild animals left on the planet. Look at the farmed animals. It makes me weep, you know. It's unbelievable. And here we are, humans, since we arrived in the world, you know. What have we done? We've desecrated planet Earth. We were living in Galway for many years, teaching in Ireland, and not vegan farmers came to our workshop. These are all the pigs that my little friends, and I saved them all. The farmers went vegan. Yes, they did. And they were exposed to, they all had health problems, but they were exposed to what we teach that had never been shared in a way that they'd ever been in front of anybody like us before, right? They adopted this way of living. They grow grains and crops over there now, and all these beautiful pigs are having a wonderful time. And then, of course, our Human Ecology Project, no-brainer, right? It's very easy to understand, and that's where we take our source of energy from every single day. I'm rushing through this, Lenny, I'm nearly done. A day in the life of you and your fork. Because when people understand the biggest form of mass destruction to human health lies at the end of your fork, it does. That's where it lies, the end of your fork. And when we establish a new relationship between yourself and what's at the end of your fork, I tell you, someone said, Marlene, you know what? I'll pay your rent for the rest of your life. Just go and teach the world for free. That's what I would do. Because it's not like work for me. It's like, I have this incredible vitality and energy because of what I teach, because of how I live, because of what I eat every day. I mean, that's the bottom line. So,
Is that a new verb that you created there, veganize?
pardon?
I like that new verb, veganize. I never.
Yeah, I veganize them. I veganize everybody that meets me. We had a 3-hour meeting with someone in Oxford there. Something's going to be happening, a project for Bill and I. And he said to Bill, I've never been veganized before. I've never even been Marlenized before. Anyway, you got to make it good fun and exciting for people. So, you know, the poorly planned diets, and that's where most people are failing. You'll read, you know, veganism's going in the wrong direction. People can't have good health, they're sick, they're falling ill. Yeah, well, what are they eating, you know? I'm sorry, you look in the supermarkets, it's filled with vegan junk, right? It just drives me insane, you know? So, developing easy life skills is, we have a thing that I've been teaching for years, mostly as a yoga teacher, really. It started about habit stacking because I've been teaching yoga for over 40 years. And, you know, I always said to my students, you've got to get into a format. Don't just say, oh, well, I might fit that in. Are you doing it 9 till 10, 7 till 8, 4 to 5? Pick a time, book yourself an appointment and start doing the habit stacking that way. And then that spills over into the rest of your life, into your kitchen, you know, into whatever it is you're looking to do. And, you know, when people are organized, they say, oh, I don't have time, but, you know, they're watching 3 hours of television or whatever they're doing. So Bill and I developed 4 weeks to vegan. The transformation is so simple. So we ran it over a 4-week period, ran every Saturday or a Sunday, whatever people felt, you know, was available to them. You could start at any time. So they'll end 4 breakfasts, 4 lunches, 4 mains, 4 desserts. Bill and I did presentations. I had a chef cook the lunch. They had lunch while they were there, while they had the cooking class. So then they've got 16 recipes in a month, right? They've learned all this education. And they love it, and they stick with the same recipes until they've mastered it, and then they'll try new recipes. You don't need 100 different things. Most people have about 10 or 12 favorite meals that they eat all the time, right? And then, of course, there's the great macrobiotic contributions, you know. I mean, seasonal eating, you know, the world copied macrobiotics in that. Kitchen alchemy, they copied it in that. You know, macrobiotics has brought such great work to the world in so many forms. And, you know, I believe it or not, I did know about macrobiotics way before I met Bill because I studied TCM. But for me, the only thing that makes sense to me is yin and yang, the impermanence of life. The only permanence is the impermanence. And if you think about that, you know, no matter where you are right now in this second, it's going to change in the next second. Remember, 37 million new cells changing every second. So the amazing power of whole grains, and we all know 1 grain, 10,000, whatever you receive, give it back 10,000 times. It's such a beautiful philosophy that we teach all our students, you know. Someone's giving you something of value, put it back out there. And then, of course, we have all the myth, oh, it's too expensive, I can't afford it, it's so expensive to eat vegan. Well, it's not, you know. Whole grains for everybody, right? I buy a big bag of short grain brown rice. I teach my students how to make a full batch to last them the whole week for the family at 16 pence a portion. This is my short grain brown rice porridge. Of course, you can add the toppings and different things, but you know, it's not expensive. And then I have a concept that I love to teach about soup, salads, steams, and starches. Makes it simple for people. If you look at that sweet corn soup of mine, it's not even cooking, right? You can buy already, you know, corn frozen or fresh in a jar. You can buy roasted red peppers already chopped. You can add some coconut cream or whatever. And remember, this book is global. It's people are using this all over the world. So this book, Go Vegan, is a bit different from Macrobiotics for All Seasons because I'm trying to bring the world to the table. I'm trying to bring people from all around the world that have strong, bold flavors. They like curry, they like chili. I don't, but I developed these recipes. So there's something in here for everybody. And this is not even cooking. This is like warming and stirring in this whole thing. Have a nice salad or some steamed greens on the side, right? The snack attack, get some aduki beans, you know, you don't even need to cook them, some cacao powder, some nuts, mix them in a blender, roll them in some coconut, red lentil coconut curry. Pennies, it takes pennies to make these delicious dishes. These recipes are all in Go Vegan, by the way. Almond mung bean burgers, make them with some ground almonds. I put seeds and nuts and things through there, I bake them. I don't use any oil. I haven't used oil for decades, purely from my own health point of view, because I had a gallbladder removal when I was a young woman, because of the fat accumulation with dairy food that my mum fed me because I wouldn't eat meat. That's another big story. So I haven't used oil for decades. And then for dessert, applesauce, one of our favourites. I make some tofu vanilla whip or whatever other cream, maybe some sweet date cream. And of course I make cakes because I have to develop recipes for, you know, I'm training chefs for royal families. They don't want just a pot of applesauce. They want something more decadent, right? So I create carrot cakes. And poor old Bill there, when I was creating that carrot cake, I must have had 4 attempts. And every time I would say, "What do you think?" He'd go, kind of still stuck to the roof of my mouth, wife. Well,
What do you use for sweetener?
After the 4th attempt, I usually use date syrup. Yeah, date syrup or rice syrup. And some of them, you know, like the black and white chocolate cake, I use kuzu or else I'll use cashew cream. It just depends if I'm doing it in a sort of, you know. The lemon tart I made the other day, Bill Spear was here, he's over from the States, and he said, "Wowza." That's what he said, Bill Spear did. I made him that lemon tart. Anyway, the science agrees. You'll find a great blog post on our website. I've got all the links from every university, every major health medical organization. A vegan diet is healthy from birth to death. Even the old NHS here in the UK have it on their website now. So you can go to our website and download that if you like. And then the vegan diet changes more than 500 genes. And you know, Colin famously coined, Colin Campbell, genes load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. But you know, there's a great study on our website as well that Dean Nornish done with Elizabeth Blackburn, and it shows you upwards of 500 changes to the genes, changing, not vegetarian, but changes to 100%. And we're talking plant-based vegan diet, not junk, you know. So, you know, Bill and I spend our life researching. We really do. We do a lot of research and stuff. Here's my boy here. Here he is. You know, I had him in the kitchen because I was doing a whole thing on fermented foods recently and sprouting for one of the schools. And the one most important thing I want to always say, much as I love Bill, but you know, your body is your life partner. My body, this is me, Marlene, my body, every organ in my body is my life partner. And if I don't take care of me, take care of Marlene, who's going to take care of me? I don't want somebody wiping my bottom when I'm older. I want to be able to be happy, healthy, dead and just sleep away, right? So your body, you've got to remember, give it respect and treat it like it's your life partner, okay? And we nourish ourselves emotionally, mentally, physically. And, you know, when we put it all together, as a yoga teacher, I go to yoga studios and sometimes I'm in the lion's den and they don't like to hear what I have to say. But, you know, if they're teaching ahimsa, they shouldn't be using animal products. They shouldn't be eating animal foods, right? Because ahimsa, as we all know, it's do no harm. No other living being should be harmed for what you want to do. And the CookFit experience is something that I've been teaching for a long time. So I teach yoga and they have a cooking class, and while they're having the cooking class, they're eating what the chef that I've hired has made, and they're watching me make what they eat. So they've just experienced whether it is whatever it is I'm making, and it's just so easy. It gets people engaged, and it's a marriage made in heaven, as I call it, right? Because what we eat and how we live has the most impactful way of how we feel every single day. And people say, you know, well, you know, you're not dying of protein deficiency. Look at what the hospitals are filled with, right? It's heartbreaking. Food is movement, medicine, food is medicine, movement is medicine. I talk about all this individually, obviously I can't. And here we are, Bill and I, 2003, terrible outfits, I know, but there you go, that was 20 odd years ago. And we talk about what our mission is, to share this beauty and intelligence of nature, because that's what makes us both tick, right? And in the words of the great Nelson Mandela, education is the most important tool that we all have to change the world. And this is me. I'm still waiting an argument against veganism. I'm sitting there and, you know, somebody's going to come up and say, you're wrong, Marlene. And I think I'll be a skeleton before that happens. So it's a philosophy. It's not a diet. It's a philosophy and a way of looking at the world in a way that it's, you know, we do not need to use animals in any shape or form. And I love old Copernicus, who, again, society resisted what he was trying to share with the world. And they eventually believed, and he convinced everyone that the earth revolved around the sun. So that gives me hope that the world will go vegan. And hope is power. So we're all in it together. I don't care if someone comes and beats me around the head. I will never give up sharing my message. And that's it from me. Now, Bill's...
But show us those two, that slide with the two website addresses so people can...
Yeah, Human Ecology Project and macrovegan.org.
So those are both, we'll give recipes.
Human Ecology Project is our charity, and macrovegan.org is where there's, you know, there's loads of stuff to free for free download in all of them, actually. Yeah. Right, Lenny, I'm sorry I took longer than you gave me.
That's okay. You had a lot to say. Could you turn off the screen share and let us see you for just a moment?
Bill's going to just share these. This is all our free workbooks to download, and Bill will tell you all about that. Okay, let me stop sharing. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks. And I wonder if there's any comments or questions or anything that could turn you back into that skeleton. Anybody have a good argument? Do you see any? There's nobody challenging her. Wow. Would you call it macro vegan too, or is that Bill's?
Yeah, we call it macro vegan because macrobiotics is not about veganism, but you know, veganism is about veganism and macrobiotics and our teaching, because you know that's what I teach. I've been vegan a long, long time, decades and decades, and Bill's been vegan a long time now, and so we thought macro vegan, macro, big, large, life, the big vegan, the big life, you know. So that's what we developed macro vegan for.
It's so in 47 years, you've been vegan?
No, I used to eat fish up until about, I'll very quickly tell you, as a child, I wouldn't eat meat, so mum fed me huge amounts of dairy food, thinking that was it. 60 odd years ago, what do you know? Tonsils out, adenoids out, always having mumps. Appendix burst nearly killed me with peritonitis because I was chronically constipated as a child, not enough fibre. Gallbladder removed, gallstones building up from cholesterol from dairy food. So look, in 2 years I'll be 70. How come in decades I have never had a cold, a sneeze, headache, nothing? I have the same energy, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, nearly 70, right? Because of what I eat, you know, I thrive on plants. So that's when I started doing all my own research. You go on your own quest. So I have these 4 missing body parts, which are immune based. They're all part of the immune system, right? And here I am. Seriously, amazing.
What about caffeine? Is
Well, I
caffeine
was
part
brought
of your
up
diet?
drinking water, so I was never a coffee tea drinking person. But you know, I enjoy green tea. I've never liked coffee. I'm not a coffee person. I've never drank it. I'm a huge water babe. You know, every client that comes to me, I have them drink 2 glasses of water before breakfast, 2 before lunch, 2 before dinner. Because look, we're in front of EMFs. You know, the air pollution. We're chronically dehydrated. Everybody I see is dehydrated. Everybody. And you've got to keep replenishing. And I've had many conversations with macrobiotic people arguing with me that you get enough fluids from vegetables, and you don't. I'm sorry, you don't. Maybe 60, 100 years ago, but not now. You know, the climate's changed. Everything's changed, you know. So that's my thing.
Thanks. Thanks, Marlene. Any comments or questions from anyone? Not yet? Oh, here's somebody had something to say. What is this? Olive oil was a question. Coconut oil? Anything about olive or coconut oil?
Well, I don't use any oils purely for my own health, and I don't use it in any of my food or any of my cooking. Because you see, for me, if you think about, you take oil and you extract it, and we get into whole things with people in macrobiotics about this as well, and I don't want to get into. But if you take it, especially with the obesity in the world as well, if I give you a couple of olives, you're looking at 10, 12 calories. If I give you a tablespoon of olive oil, you're looking at 120 calories. If I'm looking at the nutritional aspect of it, there's no nutrition in oil. Put it in your mouth, it's just grease, right? You don't mix it with water. And you know, you don't need it for cooking, you don't need it for, I mean, I bake everything, you don't need it for a nutritional point of view. It's actually I say, a toxic byproduct of a whole plant, because you're stripping everything away from it. And if you see how it gets made, you know, so that's my take. And actually there's a lot of great studies on it as well now too.
So in your cakes and pies, no oil?
No, I don't use any oils, because I'll use things like tahini, or I'll use, you know, nut butters or
Oh,
whatever.
so there's oil in those things.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking about free oil. I don't use sunflower olive oil. I don't use free oils like in bottles. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And Marlene's partner, Bill Terra, is going to talk a bit, but I just wanted to say that I met Bill in Chicago in late 1968 when he came out to introduce the macrobiotic teachings practice to a group of interested Chicagoans. And Bill continued from those early days in Boston in the late 60s until now in the early 20s of the 2000s to teach, practice, and experiment with how to maintain and establish personal health and global health. And Bill's got a number of books also he's written, and he does, I don't know how many places Bill has lived and taught throughout the world, but he has taken his message as far as he could, and now including this international forum right here. Bill, you were going to talk a little bit about 5 elements, 5 transformations, and the dietary considerations and emotional health, something that seems to have been somewhat lacking in the early macrobiotic teachings. That is, we talked a lot about physical health, but not so much about emotional health. So would you like to share some of your insights?
I certainly would. It's interesting what you said there, because when I was introduced to macrobiotics, which was in 1966, most of the buzz around macrobiotics was about emotional and spiritual development and not about health. I mean, the conversation was you become healthy so that you can improve your psyche and you can improve your cognitive health, right? That was the relationship that was there. And when I first came to Boston, I remember, you might remember him as well, Leonard Carmody, who was the first person that the study houses experienced who actually came to macrobiotics because they were sick, physically sick. And he was kind of a curiosity, that somebody would do that, because everybody was thinking about this is something that has to do with consciousness. And that idea of consciousness was twofold. Part of it was the fact that if you could balance the energy of your food, and if you could become healthy, that the natural way of being a human being was to be more spiritually aware. And so that was just a function of health. It was seen as part of the wholeness of health. And that kind of diminished little by little as macrobiotics developed, so that it became a lot more fixated on the physical aspects of it. And then, of course, after the 1970s, particularly the cancer thing came up, and then it became very therapeutic in its approach. And the therapeutic approach to macrobiotics is the one that still rules the day, I think, as far as I can see, and as far as I hear on the internet or whatever. It's become a very therapeutic approach. And the majority of the people that are interested in it, that come into it for that reason. They come into it because they've heard that there are health benefits from it. And certainly that's good and valid. There's a lot to be said about that, a tremendous amount to be said about that. And people have certainly benefited from it in that way. But I think that it's shortchanged a little bit over the years. One of the things that I think is interesting in macrobiotics is that over the last maybe 15, 20 years, there has been an increased amount of science that shows the relationship between eating a somewhat macrobiotically oriented diet and getting good health, particularly reducing the incidence of degenerative disease, non-communicable disease, and even reversing non-communicable disease. So diseases like heart disease and diabetes, particularly, and in some cases cancer. There's much more science about that, and that has been poorly integrated into macrobiotics, I think. And I don't mean to be contentious in that. I'm just saying I don't think that we really got a grip on how to integrate that. And that's true as well about the connection between the food that we eat and our nutrition and what goes on with us emotionally and cognitively. Because the amount of research that's been done over the past several years on the relationship between what goes on in the gut and what goes on in the brain, and what goes on in however you want to ascribe emotion coming out of that, if you want to attribute that to some of the cognitive processes of the brain or not, that's up to you. But definitely there's evidence that when you eat particular kinds of diets, you are more susceptible or less susceptible to certain kind of emotional states. And so what I want to do is I'm going to share my screen and put some things up on the screen, and we'll talk about those. And then if people want to discuss that, we will do that, right? So let me just navigate things here. Well, I got it backwards as usual, right? Got to get the...
If you need me to help, Johnny, I can run
No.
up. I'm counting to 10. Yay!
You may be muted, Bill.
Yeah, you're muted.
And you're not hearing me, but there I am.
Now we are.
My little microphone is back on again. My relationship to this topic is the book on your left, Macrobiotics and Human Behavior. That's a book that I wrote in the early 1980s. And that was stimulated in me for two reasons. One is I was involved in doing a little bit of off-campus study on psychology in the 1970s. And I became frustrated with it, but I attended a lecture by a man named Jack Worsley, who was an acupuncturist in London. And he started talking about acupuncture, which of course I was interested in because I was eating macrobiotically and teaching macrobiotics at that time. But he talked about 5 transformations in a way that was intriguing to me. Micho had talked about 5 transformations a little bit, but for some reason it didn't grab me. Jack Worsley did, and then I ended up meeting him and Sidney Rose Neal, who was the head of the Acupuncture Association in Britain, and I started to study the behavioral aspect of macrobiotics, and one of the reasons that it rang a bell with me was because I noticed that I had just started doing counseling. I started doing counseling in any kind of serious way after I moved to London. And particularly when I started the Community Health Foundation. And just before that, about 1965, I started like really seeing people who were coming to me for health reasons. And I noticed that one of the things that would happen most consistently with people is when they would come back for a follow-up visit, that they almost always talked about the changes that they had experienced in terms of their mood, the mood swings. People started saying, "Oh, I'm sleeping better. I really feel like a little bit more lighter. I'm not getting angry so much, or I'm not getting frustrated so much, etc." And that really fit in with what I was seeing in terms of 5 transformations and the link between nutrition and behavior. The book that is on the right, the Macrobiotics, Emotion and Behavior, that Marlene convinced me to redo the first book. And so I did, and that book is available now. I know some people, it was mentioned earlier, people don't buy books from Amazon, but if you want to get a book out, it's the easiest way to get a book out right now is to go through it through Amazon and get it out. And so that's available from Amazon and nowhere else. The other original book is available, on the internet. Sometimes it goes for like $50 a copy or something like that. I don't know how they do that, but it's because maybe it's a rare book now. But if you're interested in the topic as we develop along here, that macrobiotics, health, emotion, and behavior is a good place to access my thinking on it anyway. The foundation of this is very simple, and that is that body psychology, which is what I would term this. I taught a course at Naropa University in Colorado on body psychology, and it was very popular with the students. They really loved it because it links up with so many theories of psychology. The body is a community of cells. The community of cells always looks for to reach a state of homeostasis. And there's an assumption here, and that is that homeostasis, or the inner balance of the body, also extends out to the relationship of the organism with the environment, which is actually the origin of the term. The term itself, homeostasis, is an ecological term in a sense, because it has to do with the relationship between you and the environment that you live in. as much as it does the internal homeostasis, the balance, the chemical balance within the body. And those cells are always communicating with each other. And so every cell in the body has access to every other cell of the body. No one's left out of the conversation. The internal conversation that goes on with the body goes from the little toe to the brain, the frontal cortex. It's all in communication all of the time and constantly receiving feedback. Some of that feedback is external feedback, like when you're driving your car and somebody cuts in front of you, or when you're arguing with somebody, or when you see something very pleasant around you, or you see somebody that's very pleasant, you see somebody in an argument, whatever. That feedback is constantly going in, and it is doing a number of things. One is it's changing your body chemistry, and it's also accessing your response, what kind of response you have. Now, you can respond to the feedback that you've received in a way that is either adaptive or maladaptive. Right? So it's something that creates harmony, or it's something that creates conflict. And one of the problems that we have as human beings is we're creatures of habit. And the habits that we create are sometimes behavioral habits. And those behavioral habits, I'm going to say, are, in a sense, they're like a default setting. Some people really, it almost seems like, love to be angry. Other people really love to be pitied. We have these preferences that are there. And those fit in very much with what I see as the 5 transformations understanding. Now I'm putting this up here just briefly. This is a rough diagram of something that I think is inherent in the way that Osawa described the body. And apologies to those of you, or not apologies, but this is going to differ with some people who think, who use only TCM, right? Well, I really am a big fan of George Osawa. He was talking about, at the bottom there, digestion and excretion. And digestion and excretion are what Osawa called the yin organs. These are the hollow organs. And they either absorb or excrete. That's their function. The energy that they absorb is then upgraded into what Osawa called the yang organs: the spleen, the hearts, the lung, the kidney, the liver. Those organs filter and enhance blood as it moves through. So every one of those organs, when the blood enters that organ, it's different from when it leaves. Something has happened to it. It's either been filtered of toxins, or something has been added into it. Maybe it's blood sugar, maybe it's an immune function, whatever. And all of the direction of that, the direction of those processes, is for the brain and the nervous system, because this is the most sensitive of the physical symptoms in terms of being affected by minute changes in blood chemistry. So, you mentioned earlier caffeine, Lenny. A person may like the taste of coffee, but that's not why they drink coffee. That's not why they started to drink coffee. They started to drink coffee because it changed their perception. The same could be said for people who eat sugar. A person eats sugar. Why do they love sugar? Well, they love sugar because it changes perception. And these are all provable facts. This is not just a theory. This is something that is very provable. What you eat changes your perception. And some things are very dramatic in the way that they affect your perception, and some things are very subtle. And some things are long-lasting changes in perception, and some of them are very short. So if your system has been running on a particular food, and that has been affecting not only physical structure, but also affecting your perception, and you take that food away, your body rebels a little bit. The same is true as if you add something new, which may benefit you, or it may be uncomfortable for you, right? Is that understandable? I'm trying to move right along here, and so I don't
Yeah, great.
want to be saying things that aren't right. So it's that relationship between what happens in your gut and what happens in your brain that is so important. And this is what's being discovered more and more in conventional Western science now, and that is the gut-brain connection. And the key to that connection is what happens in those communities of microorganisms that live in the intestinal tract, the biome. That biome can change in a heartbeat. It can change in one meal. The biome can change. And what we know about the biome so far, because we don't know much, right? We know about as much about the biome as we know about the ocean, right? Which is like the first 6 inches of the top of the ocean. We know nothing about it. We know nothing about the biome, really, even though tons have been written and a lot of analysis has been done, but we don't know the inner working of how it happens. And Marlene and I met an expert on the biome a year ago at Oxford, and he actually referred. He's an expert on the intestinal problems and a surgeon, and he actually ended up referring some clients to Marlene because we talked to him, and particularly Marlene talked to him about our interest in the biome. He said, "Oh my God, that's incredible!" And so he sent some patients of his to Marlene to see if they could fix their biome. But you got to want to fix your biome in order to fix your biome. It's not like taking a pill, you have to change your food. So we're getting feedback from physical systems, and what happens in the gut affects so instantly what our emotions are. And we got to remember that, up to 90% of the endorphins in the body live in the intestines. I mean, these are what are normally referred to as feel-good hormones, right? And so here you have something that we know, a hormone that we know creates a positive attitude. And where does it live? It lives in the intestines. It's released from there and then makes its way to the brain, but this is where it lives and where it's created, right? And the hormonal responses that come from the biome, from the gut biome, have to do with our tendency to either submit or retreat or escape or fight or fly. The normal responses that we have when we are in a troubled situation. Problems like anxiety, problems like dementia, etc. More and more information is piling up every single month on the relationship between these diseases and what's happening in the gut. And so the reason that I spent this amount of time talking about this relative to the macrobiotic approach is that what's happening is we're seeing a lot of the things that were proposed in macrobiotics. Biosawa in the 50s and by Kushi in the 60s. These were things that many people said, oh yeah, well that's okay, maybe that works and maybe that doesn't work, but guess what, right? It's all there. It's being shown, and the only difference is that many of the statements which seemed outlandish at the time were made from observation, and they weren't made from measurement. And so now that we have science looking into these things, like Marlene and I sometimes joke, there's more and more physicians, or ordinary physicians, that are showing up in the whole foods, natural foods, vegan food, macrobiotic food world. And we think, I wonder how those people think. They spend several $100,000 in 6 years in university, and they end up realizing that what they really needed to do was learn how to cook, right? So there's kind of there's a cruel irony there, right? Because it's boiling down. It's become simpler and simpler and simpler in terms of seeing the direct effect. But I think this has got to be more and more shown, because the anxiety, depression, dementia, all of these things, more and more showing up that these are problems that have a huge influence by what we eat and what the health of the gut is. And so we have the issue in macrobiotics, which we live with quite happily, and that is that what we're studying is both energy and matter. And the energy part is not the measurable bioenergy of the body, although there's certain people and certain organizations that might say, well, we can measure it now, but I haven't seen anything that really is convincing from my part that the level of bioenergy that we would call chi is actually measurable, right? But we're talking about the way that we feel about things, the intuition that we have about things. And this is where Oriental diagnosis, and particularly the diagnosis that is related to emotions, comes into play and comes into conflict with some modern thinking. And that is, there's two things here. One is, and I mentioned this earlier, that when we are in good health, or when any person is in good health, is it reasonable to assume that that person is going to have a certain emotional and cognitive presentation in the world? Are they going to be a certain way? So it's like meeting somebody who's a deep meditator. They're presenting in a particular way. And the way that they're presenting has to do with the practice that they're doing. And we used to kind of joke about this in macrobiotics, that when we met another macrobiotic person, you could really tell, because you could feel that they had a similar vibe, a similar vibration. They were operating on a particular wavelength that was familiar to you. That may or may not be true, but it was an assumption, and it was a dandy one too, right? I mean, and I don't think that it was completely false. So if you're in a healthy situation, would you not have an increased intuition about the world that you live with? See, I would think you would, because I think that our most primitive ancestors, if we go back like hundreds of thousands of years, I think the original hunter-gatherer ancestors were very intuitive people. They had to be, because if you think of I'm going off. I'm diverging, right? Okay, I'm sorry, right? I'll come back. It's part of the aging, I think, is diversion, right? You just realize, oh, there's an interesting subject over here I should grab a hold of. But if you think of thousands of years, hundreds, tens of thousands of years of people migrating without huge skills for evasion. Human beings don't run very fast. Our children are absolutely helpless until they're 5, 6 years old, right? I mean, they're not able to defend themselves. We're prone to being attacked by other creatures. You need intuition in that kind of sense. You need to have something that goes beyond instinct. You need to have perceptual instinct and intuition. And so in terms of diagnosis that many of you are, most of you are probably very familiar with, the type of Oriental diagnosis that was introduced in macrobiotics, which was Boshin. Other people weren't talking about this at all when Kushi and Osawa presented it, were things that were observable. In other words, what's a person's demeanor? How do they present themselves in the world? What are their facial expressions? What's their body language? How do they gesture when they speak? What's the tone of their voice? What's their smell? What's their taste? What does their tongue look like? All of these things were part of a tradition of being able to assess a person's condition holistically. And how did they describe their condition themselves, which is sometimes left out of the picture? What is the self-assessment? How do you feel, right? Now, that's much different in modern consultations that are done around the world, because now people come with a medical report in hand, right, and present that to a counselor. But there's still this fascination with being able to see a little deeper into the process, right? Particularly now. I'm going to give you, this is the Walt Disney version of the 5 transformations, okay? So the 5 transformations of energy is very simple as far as I'm concerned. You have the totality of the world, right? You have everything together, and you have yin and yang, which is the way that energy moves within that totality. It's the big movement of energy, yin and yang. So you have expansion and contraction, etc., right? Hot and cold, male and female. You have all of those contradictions and complements there. Then within that movement of yin and yang, you have different phases of energy which are qualitative. If you think about soil, which is, I'm going to start there. This is energy which is settling. So energy settles, and that energy, which we call soil, is settling energy. And then you have it moving toward metal, which is where the energy contracts. And then you have the kind of sleeping state, where this is like the deep winter when the seed kind of goes into a state of suspended animation, and then it starts to move. And it's that movement, it's that moment of movement, that extreme yang, just like, just starting to move out again, which moves into what we call water, and then moves up in the springtime into spring energy or tree energy, and then expands out in the summer, right? So it's this cycle of movement of energy, contracting and expanding, contracting and expanding. That's 5 transformations. Now, what I see is that this corresponds with a theory of psychology which was popular in the late 1940s, early 1950s, which was called the 5 types. And this was research that was done independently in different parts of the world. And they came up with the fact that there were 5 kinds of personalities or demeanors. The soil is what I think corresponds with what was called the friend, right? And the quality of friendship, or the person who is the friend, is that they feel very solid within themselves, a feeling of solidity within themselves. People who are like the salt of the earth, right? And what does that correspond to physically? Now, the spleen and pancreas are put forward in Chinese medicine, and as the yang factor there. And I think it's the yang organs that really influence mostly. And my feeling is that that has to do a lot with immune functions. There's no such thing as an immune system, but there is an immune function, right? Marlene and I have been joking about this lately. There's really not an immune system, right? There are only immune functions in the body, right? And the immune functions in the body seem to me to be the ones that are associated with this. And many immune factors are stored within the spleen. It's a major organ in terms of the immune functions. What happens if you have really good immunity in the body is you feel confident. You remember, all the cells are talking to each other, right? You feel healthy, you feel strong, you feel like you can handle whatever comes your way. And when you're in that particular state, as a human being, in that confident, healthy state, what you want to do is you want to help others, right? That's the natural tendency. The natural tendency is, hey, you got a problem? Let me see if I can help, right? Let me see if I can help out. If that function is undermined for any reason, like say you've got multiple inflammations in the body and your immune system is overwhelmed, what happens then is that what you do is you are looking for that kind of support from other people. And so you become vulnerable and you need support. So you're constantly requesting support from other people. Now, when I say requesting, I don't mean you're asking people for support, although that's possible. I mean that your behavior because we're human beings, we have a vocabulary of behaviors. There's certain kinds of behaviors that when you're presented with them in another person, you know that they want you to pity them, or to maybe pity is a harsh word here, but they want you to support them. They're looking for support. There's even certain things that I can't do this with everyone, but I'll do it with this one. There's even certain idiosyncrasies in speech patterns. If the person is talking and they go, oh, if you say, oh, you don't look so good, and they go, oh, I don't know, I don't feel so great. And you know that voice, that kind of whiny voice, right? That means that the person is saying, I want you to ask more. I want you to get closer to me here, because I'm looking for support. I'm looking for emotional support. There's possibly the same thing with gestures. You know, we know that when you see people drop their hands and sigh, you know, what does that mean? It's an invitation for us to come forward and say, oh, what's the matter, right? What's the matter? So this kind of functional demeanor that we see in all human beings all around the world. There's certain kind of cultural changes in this, because some things are very much not exhibited in some cultures because of maybe religious or other considerations. But generally speaking, around the world, these kind of behaviors are very easy to spot. That's why silent films were so popular all over the world. You know, like Charlie Chaplin and all of that ilk. Those films were popular all over the world because they were very easy to understand. People did their expressions there, and this, and you know, you could understand them very easily. Right? So that's the way that people respond. Metal is the analyst, right? You know, why? Well, this has a lot to do with the respiratory system. Let's break this down a little bit. Could it be that part of the reason for that is that we're not getting enough oxygen in the forebrain? It could be, because we're not oxygenating well. And so we have a diminishment of oxygen. 20% of the oxygen of the body gets used up in the brain, right? You don't have to drop oxygen levels very far for people to become kind of anxious and detached. If you've ever been at a high altitude, you know what I'm talking about. When you get up above, 12,000 feet or so, you start to get a little woozy. If you don't get a headache, if you're a sea level person, you might get a headache. But once you've adapted, you can get woozy. And I met a person who climbed Mount Everest, of which now there are millions. I think they're going to install an escalator soon. But this guy was before the great rush, of people climbing Mount Everest. And he said the one thing that you do that you have to be careful of when you're climbing at these high altitudes is you can't start thinking about things. You have to concentrate on putting one foot in front of another, one foot in front of another, one foot in front of another. You don't stop and enjoy the view. When you get to the top, you stop and enjoy the view. But when you're actually walking, you have to keep this mechanical aspect of the body going. So people who have that kind of energy, and this is very, very positive, they have a kind of logical approach to life, right? And they like things organized in a particular way. Right? This logical, right? And when you read the literature, it's like they might be attracted to numbers. They like to work in that way. If that energy becomes darkened, right? Or if you kind of use a Jungian approach, if it becomes a little dark, what happens is that they have to pull things together all the time, and so they become like hoarders. They become very protective of what they have, right? They want to get more than they actually need. They want to pull things into them, and they want to protect what they have, right? Water. This has a lot to do with adrenal energy and sexual energy. I mean, this is creative energy, right? This is that energy that's moving out of that metal and just that little flash, right? This is what people like, you know, they thrive on the mystery of life. They thrive on being able to rearrange things in a different order than they usually are. You know, they want to use color, and they want to use sound, and they want to use all the different things, but they want to put them together in ways that are not necessarily practical, but that evoke an emotional response from people. You could say a sexual response, an emotional sexual response from people. They want to excite people, right? If that energy is darkened, if there's a shadow aspect to that energy, then they become almost the opposite. But we associate with kind of the bohemian, or the when I was growing up, it was the beatnik era, you know, and people always wearing black, and you know, and hanging out in dark clubs and wearing sunglasses and dates in the date at night, you know, kind of thing, you know, the cool jazz era. Everything had a mystery to it, but it was only shared with a small number of people, right? No, it wasn't extravagant. It didn't move out from itself. And we even think, you know, to drop a few things that people are familiar with here, you know, if we go, oh, come on, fella, get here. Where are you going? Doesn't want to go back. Only wants to go down. Okay, there. So in Oriental diagnosis, you always see one of the most popular visual triggers is the dark circles under the eyes. Well, every cartoonist knows if you want to make a person anxious or frightened, you put dark circles in their eyes, right? You know, you apply the charcoal there. So you see cartoons, or it's like the dark circles under the eyes, so the kidney area, you know. So all of this information is out there, you know, to tree, controller, liver. The associations with the liver is very interesting, because the liver has a huge influence on the way the brain works, particularly what are called the executive functions of the brain. Because aside from the brain, the liver uses a huge amount of energy, almost as much energy as the brain does. The brain uses a lot. The brain uses 20% of the caloric energy in the body. The liver uses also 20% of the caloric energy in the body. And there is what is called the liver cortex axis. And the chemistry that is released by the liver has a very strong influence on the way the brain works, and particularly what is called executive function, which is about decision making, right? And so this tree energy, if you think of the image here of a tree, you know, a tree is growing and growing and growing, but it conforms itself to the environment around it. You know, depending where the sun is, depending where other trees are, it conforms itself to the ecology of the area, to the larger biome, the natural biome that it lives in. So keeps things moving though all the time. Keeps it moving. Things moving. So people that have this kind of energy are associated with organizing things, keeping things organized. This is a person that knows what to do, right? You know, you give them a problem, they know what to do. They can solve the problem. They can step in and solve a problem and practically solve a problem. But if the shadow takes over, then what happens is they try to impose the solutions on other people. So rather than being a person who's great, you know, generously sharing information on how things could be organized, how things could become more efficient, they begin telling you, this is how you have to do it. This is the way that it has to be. And when you look at the literature, what's being said there is too, that's expressed in the way that the body moves. The gestures become very hard-edged and like poking, and prodding, and cutting. And if you think military gestures, a military movement, right? The movement of troops, the movement of the way the ha-cha, the salutes, all of the rest of it, that's meant to project something. You don't have an army that dances out into battle. Although some primitive people did do that and dance out into battle, but you don't want people skipping onto the battlefield. You want them marching, tight control, right? You want that kind of energy out there. So that's executive function. And then the enthusiasts, right, in the five types series, this is the heart energy, boom, sharing information. This is the conduits of information. People get, the minute they learn something, they want to share it with everybody else. Learn it and share it. Get it in, get it through. Move the information through all the time, right? So how am I doing with time?
You're okay. You're okay.
Okay. So what we see when we look at this mosaic is what's being said is there are certain archetypes that are there that are identifiable. If we got a group of actors here to act out these different five types, everybody would know exactly. They would say, oh, that's like Aunt Louise, or that's like my brother Jack, or that's like the guy that lives across the street. We would know these types. We would know these types. What happened in Chinese medicine was that, you know, because you had this, the biggest epidemiological study in history, I think, Chinese medicine, because this was a medicine that was a compilation of information over thousands of years, a couple of thousand years, looking at millions of people and saying, okay, here's certain things that we see here that are archetypal, right? And they seem to be connected with certain body types. They seem to be connected with certain physical dysfunctions, certain physical strengths. You can't turn your back on all of that. No, there's value in there. The question is, how do we interpret that value? How do we kind of, I don't want to say bring it up to date, because that'll make some people upset that study traditional Chinese medicine, you know, because they say, oh, how dare you, my fun, you know, if it was written in the Yellow Emperor, it's the truth for all times, you know. How do you bring it up to date, and how do you create the story of it in a way that it's usable? Because I think that much of the information that's in Five Transformations narrative that has to do with emotions and with health is very usable for people in their own life. Just as the great benefit of Boschin visual diagnosis is the mirror. How do you use that to look at yourself and say, oh my, look at that. I've got this issue or that issue that's showing up in physically in me. Is that indicating something that is deeper and something that is more profound that I need to work on? Because the whole of macrobiotics is really about self-control. It's about learning how to be autonomous. How do we become autonomous? How do we gain the ability and the sensitivity to know what to eat, to know how to act, to know what to do? And so there's a number of things that are, of course, very common sense and very practical here. One is that we all have to work on constantly re-educating our body and our mind together, right? This means being mindful of what's happening in our body, and not just immediately assuming that we need to go and see a professional somewhere. We don't need to run to the psychologist or the psychiatrist or to the doctor as the first option. The first option is to look in the mirror. The first option is to look at what Osawa called self-reflection. You know, what do we do? And regain our sensitivity. I think that as we change our nutrition, that is one of the primary keys to sensitivity. I mean, I think one of the things that Osawa was saying was, if you master your food, if you think about your food and you master your food, then what happens is you get insight into the effectiveness of the foods that you eat in an experiential way, not in an intellectual way, in a visceral way. And I know that there's oftentimes a joking within the macrobiotic community about some of the things that we used to do in order to gain that kind of insight, like eating nothing but one food for a period of time, or eating number 7 diet, which like was eating only brown rice for 7 or 10 days. Those kind of things. People say, oh well, that's like really extreme, but I don't think so. I think it's a window into how food affects you. Now, can you go crazy with it? Of course you can. You can go crazy with anything, right? But does it provide a window into knowledge, into self-knowledge? And of course, exercise, really important, because everybody's going to build up excess energy, right? And we have to have ways of discharging excess energy that is reasonable, and also that keeps us in a particular state of fitness. This is one of the things that Marlene has really been very very clear about in her work. It's if you don't have don't you dare laugh at me, woman, right? Because I'm a very lazy person. See, if I don't. No, you're muted. Thank God you're muted, right?
I have to just make you all laugh, right? Because Bill, we do a lot of desk work, right? And Bill does more desk work than me. So I bought him a weighted vest. It's 4.5 kilos, and he does the stairs up and down 3 times a day. It's incredible. And the difference it's made to his lungs, right? Because we're all too sedentary, Anyway, he sometimes, bitches and moans at me when I shout up when I haven't heard him moving. Husband, time to put your vest on.
I never bitch and moan. That's absolutely, that's alien to my character. So these 2 books, these are the two books that I have out now that are that I'm most proud of, and the most recent. This one, How to Eat Right and Save the Planet, is exactly what it says, right? How do you eat a diet that is good for your own health, and that also is beneficial from an ecological point of view, and macrobiotics, health, emotion, and behavior. Now, I did want to. How are we doing here?
Yeah. Maybe there's some questions. I'm not sure. Or
you're just going to play that 2-minute video.
Yeah. So when we get right to the
end, you have a video?
If you tell me, I've got a 2-minute video that we wanted to play, but it's about our workbooks.
Well, in terms of what you just described, Bill, you say exercise, diet, and so forth. Would you say that there's a particular dietary selection based on the element or the phase that the person is identified with? And is there a way of harmonizing all these phases so that we can actually reflect, both the friend?
I'll make a couple of very bold statements which wouldn't go down well with some people, and that is
no, it's going to go down with everyone. Go ahead.
The first thing is that we have to make a consideration for one of the things that Marlene said earlier, and that is we have to eat a human diet. You see, the whole aspect of therapeutics in diet goes way beyond what we need oftentimes. So a human diet might not be considered by some people, but for us is considered to be, first of all, eating no animal food. That's a contemporary human diet, right? If you're living in the world right now and you want to create homeostasis with planet Earth, right? Best way to do it, stop eating animals, stop using them for food, period. That's one, right? Then number 2, some foods that we eat that have, if you look at the research, oil is one that was mentioned earlier. I mean, the amount of research that's been done on the harmfulness of eating excess oil. I'm talking about glug putting oil in as an added, not having it as part of nuts and seeds and nuts and seed products, but as part of a basic food. I think it's very damaging, right? I think it is. And particularly, I think if you're an elder person and you've had.
What's elder?
Well, I think that if you're over 60 years old, right, and you've been eating a conventional diet, it's time to really clean up shop, right? Because the older that you get, when you get past 60-ish in that range, and of course it's different from person to person, but when you get past a certain point, it becomes harder and harder for your body to clean itself up, right? I'm using a language there that's really, I don't really like so much about cleaning up or dirtying up. It's just about refreshing tissue. You don't refresh tissue at the same rate as you do when you're 20 years old, when you're 30 years old, and you can get away with murder, so you have to go through a period of kind of giving your body a rest. One of the ways that I conceptualize this is that you have, in terms of the yin and yang, many of you who have been eating macrobiotic for a period of time, there is this thing of a spectrum of food, right? Which was there with Osawa. You have the yang food on this side and the yin food on this side, and you can do many different things. Micho, scramble it up and put it in a cube graph, and you can put it on a circle or whatever you want. But when you eat at extremes, that puts the body under stress. What you're looking for always is to move your diet to a place that reduces stress, nutritional stress. That doesn't mean that you never eat anything that's outside one way or the other, right? Except for animal food for me, which isn't even on the chart, right? Okay, on my chart, right? On our chart, right? Okay, but you want to reduce stress, and if you look at what is reducing stress, it's the foods that are not inflammatory. See, that's very simple. Inflammatory foods like oil, excessive amounts of oil in the diet, excessive amounts of animal protein in the diet, sugar, nightshade vegetables. We say, oh my God, no, not the nightshades. That's just a myth. Well, no, it's not. If you have inflammation in your body and you're eating nightshade vegetables, why? Did you not read? Can you not study? Right? Because it's there in the literature, right? Those are not good foods to eat if you have a lot of inflammation in the body. If you don't, if you're in perfect health, then fine, you have those things once in a while, because they don't trigger off a big inflammatory response. But these are things that we have to understand. So when you're doing that, if you go onto our website, onto the Human Ecology Project, there's actually a free ebook on there called What to Eat, right? It's perfectly good. You could take that book and you follow what's in that book and you'd be fine. That's a good stabilization. Then you have things that show up that are specific to you, right? And it might be that you have a liver problem or a kidney problem or whatever. And yes, the basic literature is out there, and it has been. It's been there in macrobiotic teaching for 50 years, 60 years. So there's certain foods that we know are supportive of particular organs, like we know that red beans are particularly supportive of certain kinds of kidney problems. But we also know that if you're drinking too little water, which Marlene addressed this earlier, in macrobiotics happens often, you get dehydrated, and that's not good for your kidneys either. So you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, what, am I dehydrated or not dehydrated? And what happens if I increase my water a little bit? Because it's the experimentation with ourselves that's so fundamentally important here. Why are we so hesitant that we're not going to trust ourselves? We have to trust ourselves. It doesn't mean that you do crazy crap, if you followed the things on the internet, you'd be poisoning yourself every day. every day on the internet, I see some, new food that's been discovered in the jungles of Africa, and it's going to solve all your problems and grow hair on your head and, make you sexually active again when you're 90 years old. It's all these kind of crazy promises that it's going to completely clean up your arterial system. Well, there's hardly anything that's like that. Well, right? There's nothing like that. Those kind of things don't exist, right? What exists and is most profound are simple things that are done every day. Simple things that are done every day. And we have templates to work from. I mean, like Marlene mentioned earlier, when you look at the whole population of the world, and it's diminishing now, but who are the most healthy people? The Okinawans, right? Just look at what they did. Don't follow the bloody blue zone thing. That's a bunch of nonsense, right? That's not good research. But the research that was done on Okinawa, that's really good research, right? So what were they eating? They were eating actually pretty much a macrobiotic diet. Right? It's there. The research is there. We don't need to go to some exotic extreme to get the research. It's there.
So Bill, how is you guys are working kind of tirelessly, it seems, and there's a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
Locally, internationally, like what's your take on, what's your vision? How do you feel like these ideas that are not revolutionary, but they've been consistent for the last, number of years, decades? What's your view? How is it going to be absorbed? And one of the questions that somebody asked is like the state of the world now, not necessarily just degenerative diseases, but conflicts, political conflicts, war conflicts. How do you square this idea, this positive vision, with the state of the world as it is?
Well, I think that the people who mentored macrobiotics from the beginning were using a kind of approach which I think is it certainly can be overstated, but healthy people are going to be essential for creating a peaceful world. That's going to be part of creating a peaceful world. People have to be peaceful within themselves in order to be peaceful externally. I think that one of the things that's very fundamental here also is ahimsa, right? This is a principle that was there in Buddhism. It's a principle that was there in Hinduism. It's a principle that was there in Christianity. If you go back a little bit, right? This is about not harming. Don't harm other creatures. I mean, we kill billions of animals every year, 80 billion animals a year. For what? Because we like the taste. Well, what does that do to our psyche? We're going to talk about energy. Let's talk about energy. What does it do to your psyche if you're eating a food which is based on violence? What are we doing? Now, of course, anybody can come up with many reasons why they don't want to do that, or it's not the same, or it's not this, or it's not that. But again, look at the literature very clearly. What do you need? Do you really need to do that? Right? I say there's nothing that says you do. Now, those are things that are a good start. And then, of course, you have to vote, and you have to speak out against the things that you think are not reasonable or just or fair in the world. Those things are all things that have to be done, right? But where are you going to get the energy to do that? Where are you going to get the health to do that? Right? We have to take care of ourselves first, along with doing all of the other good things that we want to do. Nobody can do everything. You can't do it all, but you can do what you can do, right? And you have to be prepared to do that. I think,
Do you have some ongoing classes that people can also avail
well,
themselves of?
we have an online course on macrovegan on our macrovegan site. which is a really good course, I have to say. And you can do
have
it.
bias.
You can do it at your own speed. You know, it's a series of modules, and you can buy them individually or collectively, and you can study them. And when you study them, if you're serious about studying them, you study them at your own speed. And when you get to a certain place, we're happy to have a conversation with you, just an individual conversation with you. And that's what we can do right now, aside from the work that we're doing in schools and what we want to do. And that's where our workbooks come in. You know, we've been, one of the things that we've been producing, I see our friend Amit is on the call. He's a young man that's helping us to develop our workbooks and our videos. We're going to do these little 15-minute videos for anybody really, but we're aiming at teenagers, about different aspects of health and the environment. You know, I think that, you know, part of the question that you asked earlier was about what we think about those things. We have to, and it's a hard thing, but we have to develop a different way of thinking about things. Gregory Bateson, who some of you probably know, or may remember, far distant past, you know, an incredible genius of a man, right? Who we forget so easily. We just wipe people off of our collective memory. Bateson said that there was no way to change the environment until we create an ecology of mind. To create the ecology of mind. The ecology of mind is, if I can try to explain something about Bateson in a couple of sentences, is about seeing the connectedness in what we do. What's the connection between what I eat and the world? Economically, ecologically, spiritually? What are the connections that are there? What's the connection between what I buy and the rest of the world, right? Those kind of connections, that's developing an ecology of mind, right? Trying to simplify the life that we live, and at the same time trying to make it coherent with the kind of values that we say that we have. See, a lot of people, and I don't want to harp on this, but I will, and that is, a lot of people say they love animals, and they love their cat and they love their dog, and then they eat an animal, right? Who is, you know, and if you see animals that are domesticated that we use for food, I mean, they're delightful creatures. They've just not been allowed to play. You know, I mean, we've been surrounded by sheep and lambs here where we are. And Marlene and I have been out every day, and the population of lambs and sheep is disappearing every day. They're carting them away. But those little lambs, without shedding a tear, right? Those little lambs are like puppies. They jump around and they play with each other, and they, you know, they bump heads with each other, and their mothers get pissed off with them and they shoo them away. You know, it's just, they're just like puppies. They don't treat us like puppies because we haven't domesticated them to that extent that we have a dog and a cat, right? Okay, but it's the same true with every animal that we eat, right? So what's the ecology of mind there?
You have you still have a video you want to share? Yeah. Sylvia had something, but Sylvia, can you wait until Bill shows this video?
I will do my darndest.
Well, what we decided, we created these workbook videos, and it's called Connecting the Dots for a Planet in Crisis. So each workbook, one might be about soil health, one's about water, one's about, you know, what to eat. You'll see there's 7, we've done 7 so far. And each has a video, short 15-minute video with the workbook. And there's all sorts of citations and research. There you go. Oh, I don't think the music's playing. Let's see.
There are so many aspects of the natural environment that we acknowledge are essential, but we're choosing to neglect. One of these is water. Along with the air we breathe, water is essential for human life and health and must be classified as a nutrient.
We want to look at the source of our food, soil it's grown in, and why it's important for planetary as well as personal health.
Phytonutrients can be found in all plant foods. Every plant has them in abundance. It's essential to give your body excellent daily nutrition to keep your immune system healthy and very strong.
The oceans and the life they contain are a great mystery to us. Our lack of understanding has not stopped us, however, from dramatically changing the very composition of the seas.
Carbohydrates are the most common, sustainable, and essential of the major nutrients. It's the fuel that we run on. It's the source of glucose, which, when converted to energy, supports most body functions.
Food choices are one of the most powerful ways that individuals can contribute to a healthy planet. We will not be saved by governments or science or technologies.
It seems that we've completely forgotten that simple fact. Food is often seen as something manufactured and not a product of nature. So Bill and I want to shine a little light on what makes sense regarding the human diet and why it's so important right now that we make choices that serve not only our personal health, but the survival of planet Earth. And we're all in this together. So if you can, please join Bill and I in service for a healthy world. Your donation, no matter how small, will go towards creating our educational videos, digital media, and community outreach programs.
We need your help in getting the message out. Thank you.
That's great. That's great.
We're just getting ready to start our next series of six of those. Right? So, and everything on our website, the workbooks and everything, they're all free to download. And if you have people who are interested in any of these topics and you want to share information with them, give them the information. The references are all there, so they can click in and and look at the science that's behind some of the statements that are made, and so.
What we're doing is we're trying to encourage all the pupils and community groups that we go to start their own study groups. That video didn't play very well. I don't know, maybe the slow in the internet. It's much speedier and it's got music and stuff on. But anyway, when they download all the workbooks, there's questions that Bill and I put at the end of each workbook to start the discussion. So, family, friends, pupils, community groups, the Rotary Club, whatever, they're getting together and they're starting their own study groups with these workbooks. So it's we're very excited to start the next series. Yeah.
That's great. Sylvia, you've been patiently waiting. She has a question or a comment. Sylvia Gray.
Okay, I want to say I love seeing you guys. And Marlene, I want to steal the blouse that you're wearing in that video. It seriously is so amazing. And I want to steal you guys' tech knowledge, how to make videos and websites and all the things I don't know how to do. I just so much admire your competence. I want to mention that, yeah, we're all on the same team as far as wanting to help the animals and wanting to help our planet. Yeah. And back at the end of the 80s, when the vitamin B12 brouhaha came up, the first thing I did was go to get the actual copy of the actual research at the University of Southern Oregon and look at the figures for the B12 findings on the different foods. And as soon as I saw 3.4 for 100 micrograms of beef liver, I wrote the researcher, Dr. Bonnie Specker, and I asked her, is this correct? And then it turned out, yes, it was. And then they said, oh, but the sea vegetables, which were twice as high or more, oh, that's phony, that's analog. So wait, how could that be analog? They used a radioassay using purified intrinsic factor and la-da-da. If the sea vegetable was analog, why isn't the cow analog, cow liver analog B12? So Then we did the testing. And a year after that, I started the B12 project on behalf of the animals, because I knew that people would use this B12 issue to eat animals. I commissioned a lab in California to go out and purchase samples of 3 types of animal food and to test them using the protozoa that had been used to discover the vitamin in the 40s, last of the vitamins to be discovered. And they did the tests more than once, several times. They kept having this little protozoan die off, and then they had to order new batches of the assay organism from American Biologics. And then they refused to keep working with this.
What was the conclusion that you discovered? If you could just summarize.
It was shown in Solstice, for instance, 0. We have the lab reports, no vitamin B12, real vitamin B12 in these animal foods, representative animal foods. And the lab director told me that people had requested the same test on hamburger and had gotten the same results, 0. So, okay, we knew where we were going. Now, when I did the lecture for Ganat Rice last year on vitamin B12, I started with the fundamental issue that the disappearance of vitamin B12 from our planet is a global planetary in terms of the health of the planet. And I started with the needs of diatom, the tiny one-celled algae in our ocean. Scientists have been tracking the diatoms for years. Their population has declined by 1/3 in tandem with the disappearance of vitamin B12 from the seawater. And as far as sea vegetables go, they use the vitamin for the same metabolic process, a conversion of methionine that humans use it for. So yeah, that's sea vegetables. But then on the topic of human instinct and animal instinct, humans followed herbivores for centuries because the herbivores knew where the salt was. The cow in the field, the domesticated cow, is alive because it was given a block of salt to live.
I'm going to ask you to stop your comments for right now. I appreciate your insights about B12, but that's for another time. But it's good to compliment what Bill and Marlene are saying about
I'm
the value
saying
of a vegan diet. Anyhow, we need to draw this to a close right now. So is there any final comment you want to make, Sylvia?
Yeah, I want to say we can support the animals by eating enough salt to access the nutrients in our diet. Otherwise, people end up going, even herbivorous animals will eat, like deer have been seen eating the eggs and the young birds of ground nesting birds when they don't get enough sodium, which they need to run their body. So yeah, we can support the animals and the planet by a vegan diet. And the Japanese taught us how to do it through the use of salt.
Okay, great. There will be a recording of this presentation. Some people have asked about that, and there will be a transcript as well. Bill and Marlene will review it all just to make sure before it's posted to the world. And is there, Carol, you had your
Yes.
hand up. Is there something else you wanted to say?
Just a quick question. Just some advice. I've gotten off track. I'm really in the hospital right now with my brother dying, and I've gotten off track with my food. And would somebody be able to tell me just some simple steps to get back on track? Like,
The dietary recommendations are posted on the websites that Bill and Marlene said. We're not really offering dietary health for people right now on a one-on-one basis, but there are general guidelines on the free booklets on their website. But there are other people probably better suited for a one-on-one conversation with you about your diet and your health. If that's okay, it's not appropriate at this time, but.
Okay. Could you suggest somebody?
Bill, would you suggest somebody?
Who's talking?
Speaking.
There's a woman who asked for some dietary suggestions, somebody that they could go to for some dietary help.
Well,
rather than-
as I said before, I would first of all download the What to Eat book and just start. You know, it's there. It's all there, and there's like if you don't know how to cook the food, the recipes are there as well. Right?
And that's your book, Bill. Your book
No,
is.
it's
They're
on our
free.
website.
They're
It's a
free
free
ebooks
ebook,
on their
Carol.
website that you can
Free ebook.
download.
It's called What to Eat, and it's about 40 pages long. And
Okay.
Bill and I put it together. It's beautifully illustrated with all the beans and with a great explanation under each one. And there's loads of free videos and stuff. But that's just
Okay.
the basic structure, Carol. It's very easy. Yeah.
Anyhow, Marlene and Bill, we really appreciate you taking the time this morning, this afternoon, this day. Springtime is beginning, and it's a
Yeah.
chance for new starts for all of us. We appreciate your dedication, your efforts, your writing, your teaching. I don't know if there's some final words you want to say, you want to share. Marlene, anything?
Yeah, I just want to say, Bill and I were chatting the other day, and this is serious. He said to me, you know, Marlene, I have better health now at 83 than I did when I was 60 because of the way I know I do push, right? Because he wasn't into yoga so much, but I can see it himself. He's actually aged younger instead of older. And seriously, So, okay, I might be a little bit, water drinking and green vegetables, but that's how I've lived my life. And Bill's adapted everything in the last 25 years the way I live to more suited to my veganism passionate heart, which has been my life's work, and it's paid dividends. He said just the other day, I feel better at 83 than I did at 60. So what does that tell you?
That's true. Adaptation is the secret of evolution, Okay, well, thanks, Lenny. Thank you very much. And folks, use the resources of the website.
Yes, please.
Human Ecology Project. It's there to be used, and share it out with people, So it's all non-political, good information about health for us and the planet. Good stuff.
And Lenny, thank you for the opportunity for letting us share our work and our voice and, how I'm trying to veganize the world. That's my mission. Boom, boom.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everybody. And like I said, there will be a video of this posted, and there'll also be transcripts and summary statements. But thanks again for everybody.
Thank you, Lenny.
Have a great rest of the month.
Bye now.
Thank you, Lenny.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, Clara. Bye, Lenny.